One of the oddest, but no doubt most successful campaigns in Hollywood history to pit two films against each other in an opening weekend showdown designed to promote interest has to be 2023's $244 plus million opening weekend box office, collected by Oppenheimer and Barbie. If you're counting ticket stubs, Barbie sold just shy of twice as many tickets as Nolan's 3-hour R-rated historical thriller. Although incredibly rare, there are toy movies that predate Barbie with big themes and strong ideas, but none of them capture the attention of a global audience quite like Greta Gerwig's modern classic. And that's what Barbie feels like, a return to form of a style of classical filmmaking lost to time. America Ferrera's character Gloria gives a monologue at the midway mark of the movie that summarizes the pressures of being a modern woman. But I think anyone listening would find what she's saying relatable, and that's coming from a lion. The more the film's characters, mostly consisting of toys, bang the drum of what it means to be a strong woman, the more they define what it means to be human, which is far from ideal. One of my closest friends, photographer and horticultural historian Jennifer Tyson, has come to my jungle dream house today, and I'm so glad she could make the trip. Hello, Barbie. Please, help yourself to any invisible drink you'd like.
Oh, thank you so much. Don't mind if I do.
Yes, we have plenty of it. I know you're a bit of a green thumb. How do you like the jungle here? We've got plenty of plants.
I think they're beautiful. I think they're lush. I think they're verdant. And as long as they're not invasive, they're all right by me.
Well, I can assure you, none of them are invasive. Most of them are fake, but there are a few pathos in here that are completely 100. Speaking of fake things, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, we're talking today about some plastic, about Barbie. Jen, what was your relationship like with Barbie? You know, as a little Jen growing up, did you have Barbies? Is it something you wanted? What was your relationship like with the brand?
I I had a fraught relationship with Barbie as I was going into sixth grade. It dawned on me that I'd never had a Barbie. I'd never wanted a Barbie. They were not my thing. And when I was going into school, into middle school, I realized this and I started to have an existential crisis. I realized that if I hadn't played with a Barbie by the time I was in middle school, that something was wrong with me and my development. And I needed to rectify the situation immediately. And so I asked my mom to drive us to the store. We went to the mall and I picked out a Barbie at random. The only deciding factor for me was, oh, she has dark hair. I have dark hair. I guess I'll get that one. I took it home.
Mhm.
I went through the motions. I took it out of the box, took the clothes off, put the clothes back on, put her back in the box, put her away, and said, all right, I did it. My childhood development is now complete. I'm okay to go to middle school now without having missed a major step. I don't know. I feel like maybe that's how ingrained the Barbie brand is
I'm
into girls' minds where you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't done it. Maybe I'm not ready to go on to the next step of adolescence without having done so.
First of all, yeah, I mean, well done, Mattel. I mean, you clearly have burned your way into the human experience to an extent that many young women out there are dealing with. I mean, I thought, Barbie was a heavy movie, but maybe it's just a common experience.
I was done.
Okay.
It was over, and I felt like I could move on to adolescence and move on from childhood.
In sixth grade, I take it was okay, generally speaking.
I mean, it was all right. I mean, as good as sixth grade can be. Let's just say it left a mark on me to the extent where I later became a middle school teacher because I related so much to what middle schoolers go through and how hard it can be. And I felt like if I was going to teach any age group, it had to be middle school. So I could almost like go back in time and be the teacher I wanted to have had,
That's
to all these kids. So yeah, it worked itself out. There was some sort of cyclical situation going on there.
But I will jump into things. We're going to talk about the movie now. We fast forward to 2023. Did you see Barbie in theaters? Were you excited to see it? I mean, clearly you did not have a shelf full of Barbies back at the house.
Right. I wasn't really excited to see it. I didn't have much of an interest other than the fact that it was a cultural phenomenon. And I wanted to be a part of this cultural phenomenon. And Greta Gerwig, Margot Robbie, like the cast was stellar. And I was like, okay, this is going to be better than I would anticipate, I'm sure. But the reason I actually went to the theater to see it is because my coworkers who are super into Barbie, wanted to all get together, dress up in pink, dress up as Barbies, and go. Well, I didn't really do that. I mean, I wasn't really into that. Like, I was
Sure, sure.
passable. Let's just say I was a passable Barbie. Went with them, and so it was that community feel with the girls, but I felt really I felt like I was back in early sixth grade days. Like,
Right.
do I do this? Is this really for me? I'm just gonna go with it. And
Sure.
I was really moved, just like so many other people were moved in the theater. It really hit a lot of points that I related to, that a lot of people can relate to. And I was really glad that I went, and I was glad that I went with them, with other women. So it was a good experience, but not one that I would have sought out on my own.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience in revisiting it. I did not go to the theater with a bunch of girls dressed as a Barbie, but upon my second watch, like I liked it the first time, but I liked it a lot more the second time, and really walked away sort of appreciating it a lot more, and kind of
Yeah.
more into it. Now, Jen, this is your first time in the jungle, the first time on the show. The way we do things here is we talk about five different categories. We start out with plot.
I will say I thought that the plot was a great one. It seemed feasible, somewhat plausible. The idea that, you know, there was some sort of otherworldly reason why she would be able to go into the real world. And then you see her journey into, does she feel like she wants to continue in this world? Does she not? That all resonated. It seemed familiar, so I could follow it. I thought it was good at her self-realization, realizing what the real world is and how that reflects back on Barbie Land and her life and the lives of, the other Barbies and the Kens. I thought the plot was well done. Greta, Margot, as a producer, I thought they did a great job of making it seamless and where you could really flow with it.
And I'm curious because, you talked about your albeit brief experience with Barbie as a girl. This very easily could have been a love story in a movie about Barbie and Ken getting together, and it clearly isn't. This is very much a movie about sort of female empowerment. This is a movie that is all about Barbie in particular, sort of gaining enough self-belief to sort of stand on her own and be her own woman, go from doll to woman. Um, in terms of how that ended, I mean, do you appreciate that? Especially, I mean, I feel like a lot of people probably saw it as subverting some expectations.
I thought it stuck the landing perfectly. I loved it. And I was really moved by it to tears, truly, both times, because especially towards the end, when you see this montage that she's envisioning after having talked with the creator, her creator, this dreamy montage of girls laughing, crying, embracing their mothers, really feeling the joys and depths of being a girl, being a woman. And I feel like it was after she saw that, the lows, but also the highs and the sisterhood. You see these depictions of women and girls with each other, supporting each other. And I feel like her seeing that sisterhood is what made her feel like she could be a real woman. She'd already experienced the depths of it to a certain extent and realized she could have that sisterhood outside of Barbie Land in a more meaningful way. And it was worth it for her to be a part of that reality. And being a woman and having a sisterhood, many sisterhoods of my friends, I can absolutely relate to that and say that I could see how envisioning that and experiencing that to a certain degree could make any toy want to be real, especially if she can be a real girl or a real woman with other women as a support for her.
Is it fair to say that she, in that montage, saw for the first time what she truly represented, what Barbie as a character represented, and that sort of
Mm,
allowed her to be whole. Because that's what I interpreted it as. And look,
mm.
obviously I'm a male lion, but we lions, there's pretty much only one lion in the pride. I'm surrounded by a lot of ladies over here, love them all.
All right.
Clearly, I didn't necessarily have the same emotional takeaway from that. I don't think it was designed to be that, but I don't know. I'm just curious. That's what I saw as like the kind of final part of the arc, especially with her meeting her creator. I looked at that as a sort of symbol of she's getting this final confirmation of what she represents. And I mentioned earlier the hero's journey. Classically, the hero's journey is sort of built around like an item or an object or something that the hero is after. And in this movie, I think that that is exactly what it's after. She's realizing this sense of self and this sense of purpose. And as a brand and a toy that's meant to represent every woman, what I interpreted as that she was literally seeing that for the first time.
I think that is a really great take on it, especially when you consider the very famous now monologue by America Ferrera, where in which Margot Robbie, Barbie, is saying just before that, I feel like I'm not good enough for anything. She feels like a failure. She has that support from America Ferrera's character saying essentially, no, it breaks my heart to know that you feel like you're not good enough. Ha Being on the heels of that, experiencing what she could be a part of, I think absolutely understanding her purpose. And I think that's a great takeaway. Why not? Absolutely.
I feel like we could talk about the plot of Barbie all day.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna get a grade out of you, as is the case here. 1 out of 10.
I gotta say, I would probably give it a 9, in large part because of how, well, maybe this is going into the themes really, but the underlying themes that really work through the entire plot line. Yeah, even so, I would still give it a 9. I think it's a great plot. I think people of all ages and genders can relate to it, and some more deeply than others. And I think that is the mark of a successful plot.
Absolutely agree with that. Next up, we're going to talk about characters and performances. And what I want to, I'll tee it up by saying this. In the last episode of Real Talk, we talked about Spike Lee's early joints. One of them in particular was Do the Right Thing. I really love Do the Right Thing. And I think a lot of people, especially upon their first watch, realize that it's having a really difficult conversation, but it is an extremely entertaining movie. And what we didn't touch on while talking about the plot necessarily is how incredibly funny Barbie is. And I think there are going to be a lot of people out there, maybe a lot of guys who are afraid that there's going to be some heavy-handed message. This movie has ideas, but this movie is at all times hilarious.
I got to agree with you there. And on top of that, I'd forgotten about that because I was left with such an emotional reaction to it the first time I saw it, that when I was watching it the second time with my kin, um, I was laughing so hard, but also so enjoying him laughing so hard. He'd never seen it and he was loving it. So incredibly funny. Just the goofiness about it, too. It was goofy and silly, but super smart at the same time. So I feel like that's yet another reason why so many people could relate to it and really enjoy it.
I'm curious, what was your thoughts on the Ken character and then a little bit on the Alan character as well, sort of, diet Ken, if you will, Crystal Ken.
Crystal can fantastic. Okay, well, I'll say first and foremost, the Alan character. Next to me in the theater when I'd seen it the first time, clarified like, oh, that was, the Ken that never really made it. And so then it was hilarious. And the fact that it was Michael Cera, I mean, come on, he makes anything funny, but also the makeup they put on him to make his eyes look so bizarre and doll-like was just fantastic. His deadpan delivery for things just kills me. So I love that they had him as a peripheral character, just like he was a peripheral toy back in the day. But as far as the actual main Ken, I mean, it's Ryan Gosling. He's so funny and just so charming. And I really loved the fact that they played upon his character being completely dependent on Barbie. Everything is dependent on her approval of him, and he makes his decisions based on that. And maybe this was on purpose. I feel like it must have been, the role reversal that so many women traditionally have lived in that sphere
The bimbo.
around men, and will typically say, oh, I know, I just got lost in him, I dropped my friends and I started to like the things that he liked and do the things that he liked to do, and find themselves in a position that they never even expected they would be in. And so to
They
see,
become an accessory. They become the,
right.
yeah, not the side piece in the dating sense, but yeah, the kin to a Barbie. That's that. I totally appreciate what you're saying because I feel like he, in almost to an extent, for many years, what people maybe thought Barbie was, again, this pretty blonde kind of idiot bimbo. And so when you say role reversals, that's what I thought it was. It's just this perfect,
Hmm.
hilarious, like we're gonna make Ken what many people for decades probably thought the Barbie was.
Well, I gotta say, I love Issa Rae. She's one of my faves. And
Yes.
especially when she came down from the steps to blow the minds of the Kens and let them know, hey, we've taken over. And she lets out that, listen, MFers, this is what's going on. And they're like, what? Kate McKinnon's character and how she
Weird
delivered
Barbie.
it. She was the perfect person to cast for Weird Barbie. The fact that they even had a Weird Barbie, just genius. I felt like there were so many realistic portions of this movie that's so fantastical. And I know we'll probably talk about it later too, but I mean, come on. The cinematography, the set design, incredible. The colors, the vibrancy, just the otherworldliness of it. It really let you get into that toy world. Even for someone like me that's not, I would not gravitate to a toy type of movie. I mean, I didn't gravitate towards Barbie as a child even. So it really let you do that. So I'm probably getting ahead of myself. But yeah, as far as the characters went, spot on all of them. Will Ferrell as the Mattel CEO, the fact that they even were able to include this whole Mattel CEO and all of his minions as a current day kind of
Parody.
conversation piece. I couldn't believe it. I just thought, I can't believe Mattel even letting this happen because it's a total spoof on them.
And I think that's really important, especially when you have a movie where a cynical viewer could very easily go, "This is just a toy movie. They just want us to go in there and fall in love with us more, so we go out and buy more toys." And there's a part of them that's absolutely correct, but there is more going on here than just that. 1 out of 10, Jen, what do you give the characters before we get into visual storytelling, which I'm excited to hear your thoughts on?
I got to give the characters a 10, especially if it's an ensemble grade. I mean, come on, between Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, the Knuff, I mean, just the song he sings, they're incredible, much less all the other cast members, just top notch. Got
Look,
me in the theater.
visual
Mhm.
storytelling. You mentioned earlier the set design. This has a very Bugsy Berkeley kind of old, Hollywood musical feel to it. I think the marriage of the classical filmmaking techniques really allows us to take this classic American brand and sort of, again, embrace it in a way that feels organic and feels classy and doesn't feel like cheap, shitty plastic. What about maybe when we're outside of Barbie Land and once we get into the real world? How did you feel about sort of when we're in Barbie Land? I even feel very comfortable. It felt like this is where we're supposed to be. When we're outside of Barbie Land, it kind of always feels off and it always feels wrong. Did you feel the same way?
I did. That's such an interesting point. I felt like, and I'd have to rewatch it to really see if this is true, but it felt like in the real world, other than in LA, but even in LA, when they say, they traded the neon of Barbie Land for the neon of LA. And so you see that LA scape, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's true, but it's not as vibrant as I was even would even necessarily think of. They were the most vibrant ones in the area as they're rollerblading through the crowd. And I think maybe that was on purpose too, to show that it still would never compare with Barbie Land.
Right.
And then even when you get out of LA, well, out of that area of LA, things just seemed a little duller, a little more grayish or bluish in tone. And so maybe that's the part that was more purposeful. Yeah, I felt that definitely. And I will say also, just because I don't want to miss the transition between Barbie Land and the real world on their journey to it. I loved the montages that they had for the different modes of transportation, how they included those from, previous modes of transportation that people could actually buy over the years for
Yeah.
Barbie. But I loved the cutout imagery, classic Hollywood, in such a fun way that I kept wanting them to go back and forth so I could see that. And whenever I think of the movie, those transition scenes on their journey are the ones that stick out to me the most. That's what I'm picturing when I think of Barbie.
1 out of 10, Jen. Visual storytelling.
Oh, I mean, come on. It's got to be a 10. It's got to be. And so I'm even going to say Barbie the movie, 10 out of 10.
Use of sound is up next. Barbie has original music, but it has this really funny, self-aware original music that's calling
Hmm.
attention to what's going on. And I mean, it's not just a soundtrack that's fun, which it has. It doesn't just have original music you can put on and listen to in the car, which it has, but it really does elevate this to a whole nother experience. Your thoughts on the use of sound?
Oh man, I have so many, but I'll start with the fact that I loved in the opening sequence when Barbie's getting ready and she's, getting ready for the day with the other Barbies, and you hear Lizzo singing, and it's great. And she's essentially singing, but she's narrating what they're doing. And then as the scene continues, you hear Lizzo sing things like, well, I was just singing right now when somebody kind of interrupts the song to have some sort of verbal exchange in the movie. I loved it. I thought, well, if you're not listening, you're not really paying attention. But if you are listening, Lizzo's now another character in this movie through this song. And it continued that way. And I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. I also, I mean, everybody seems to love Billie Eilish's um, version of What Was I Made For?
Mm.
And I love it too. I love that you can hear it playing softly in the background at pivotal moments. In particular, when Barbie stumbles upon her creator, Ruth, in the kitchen that just happens to be behind a door in Mattel headquarters, and you see them having this heart to heart conversation, and the song is playing, the instrumental version of it is playing very softly in the background. I love when movies do that. I love when they tie it together and create that feel when one theme song just kind of runs throughout. There's just so much to it, but I love, and let me also say, I'm not a fan of that kind of, like, I was listening to more of the soundtrack today before this podcast, and I thought, yeah, these songs, the upbeat songs, aren't typically my thing. Like, they're what you might hear on the radio. I don't listen to the radio. I don't like it. It's not my thing. But in this movie, they make total sense, and I get them, and I appreciate them more because of how they're used throughout.
Right. I'm curious, Jen. 1 out of 10. I have a feeling what I think you might give it, but I'm curious. 1 out of 10. What would you give the use of sound?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit lower on this one and go with just my own personal take on it. Probably a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
Just because the other songs as a whole, as fun as they may be, they didn't impact me in any way. To me, the overall sound is so generic these days that I'm like, besides Lizzo and Billie Eilish, the others, I'm just like, okay, they all sound similar to me
Sure.
in tone. Um, but I do appreciate that they are fun. For me, I'm gonna go with a 7 or an 8.
So is that
7.5.
7.5? All right, locking in the 7.5. Fair enough. Look, Greta, if you're listening, let us know in the comments how hurt you are by Jen. Margot, I appreciate you. I'll reveal my score later, though. Don't worry. Uh,
Okay. Well, you can't win them all, as they know from the Academy Award nominations they got and
I
did
mean,
it.
look, Gosling did sing a song, so I thought maybe that was an automatic 10. But it's good to know the Gosling bias is not present in other. Look,
I'm
that's integrity,
remiss.
Jen Tyson. That's integrity, and I respect it.
Al, I gotta say, I might bump my score up a little bit to a 9 because I had totally spaced out on the Ryan Gosling song and how great
Wow.
it was.
It,
So
I
I
was
gotta
gonna,
bump it up.
are we going to a nine? The
We're going to
first
a
time?
9.
Wow,
We're going
first
to
time
9.
in real
And
talk.
that's thanks to you.
That's what I'm here for. Look, I was surprised because it's one of my favorite songs in the movie. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a very late addition, maybe even his idea. There's definitely a story there. I remember hearing
Ooh.
about it, but I don't recall off the top of my head. Seriously, let us know in the comments if you know that story. And just let us know in the comments in general how much you like Barbie and maybe what you think the themes are. But Jen, you don't have to let us know in the comments what you think the themes are. That's our last category. Fair to say that she wears the themes on her sleeve. I mean, this isn't a movie that you have to dig really deep to figure out the themes. I think it's very self-aware and it traverses its themes really well.
I was really enjoying when Barbie and Ken went to the real world and their first encounter was with the crowd watching them come through on their rollerblades and crazy outfits. And Barbie's response is immediate trepidation and fear and anger, as well, when she's being ogled. Meanwhile, Ken feels validated and almost grateful. Like I'm finally where I'm being appreciated. And I thought the role reversal immediately upon entering the real world, where Ken is realizing, oh, patriarchy's a thing, and it elevates me to a point that I've never experienced, and I love it, and I want to bring it back. That was so telling. And then seeing how the worst aspects of patriarchy brought back to Barbie Land could truly create havoc for everyone, it seems. I loved that theme and the role reversal and how blatant and obvious that was.
Well, and I think that what's so profound and powerful about Kin coming into the real world, I hope what can happen for maybe some male listeners who haven't seen Barbie and might be considering it. Maybe it was the Lego or Transformers chat that pulled you into this episode. But if there isn't trepidation about seeing Barbie, or there's even times while you're watching the movie that you don't feel comfortable in Barbie Land, I think that's the point that the movie is making. That as comfortable as Ken feels in our world and is maybe as uncomfortable as certain men may feel in the Barbie world, that is shining a light in a way that I don't think a lot of movies are able to do in sort of articulating the way a lot of females feel in the quote unquote real world. That there is this patriarchy and this, very clear sort of masculine overlay to everything, and how, for most women that just is inherently unnatural, and how just upon immediately entering again a sunny beach, you can feel unsafe even right next to your man. You can feel unsafe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Such a good point. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so glad that you brought up that point because exactly, she's right next to Ken, and the men are still ogling her, still vocally harassing her, not a care in the world. And so she does feel immediately unsafe and is upset by the fact that the real world isn't what she expected. It's the complete opposite. How incredible that one of the main themes, the men in Barbie Land, don't necessarily feel enough. They are in this not necessarily
Support.
matriarchal society because there really aren't any children there. So that's a slight part of it. But
It's tough when no one has
ultimately,
genitalia, Jen. When they're all plastic dolls. No
yeah, no children can
genitalia,
be
kids.
had except for Midge, the pregnant Barbie. I loved that part too. That was hilarious. Just seeing that the roles can be reversed in this fun, interesting way. So if you sit through it and laugh through it, because you will, you can take something out of it that you might not have even necessarily thought about.
What I think is the mark of a great movie is you can isolate 90 seconds, 3 minutes, and you can end up having this really long conversation about it. You mentioned that moment when when Barbie and Ken come into the real world. You can really dissect that a lot, because the reality is anybody who looks like anything, if you were dressed like that, people would stop and they would look. And it again calls into attention not necessarily what's appropriate or not appropriate in terms of your reaction to something, But it's just going a step beyond that to say, like, hey, if even if your reaction is to naturally look at something, just be aware that that might make the person uncomfortable, and maybe it won't. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that in our culture today, and especially if a good-looking woman dresses in a way that she feels, I don't know, I don't want to say sexy, but if she feels a way where she's confident and she likes it and someone else perceives her as sexy, there is a disconnection there, that it's not necessarily appropriate for the person who finds that person attractive to articulate them or even again look at them or ogle them, because if you just assume that person presented themselves that way for one reason, you could be completely wrong. Most people looking that would assume the boyfriend is being forced to be dressed that way, when in actuality Ken loves the outfit and he loves showing off and he feels whatever. So it
Yes.
is always played for laughs and subverting expectations, but it is still, again, constantly kind of being able to have a couple different conversations at once. I'll shut up because I'm having too many conversations at once. What would you give the theme, Jen? 1 out of 10.
Oh, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 all day.
You've locked in your final score, which means we have a total. I get to reveal your total to you.
Oh, you tell.
I don't always say this, but I hope some of the listeners are playing along. So you guys should lock in your score in the comment section. Jen, you gave the plot a 9. You gave the characters and performances a 10. You gave the visual storytelling a 10. You initially gave the use of sound a 7.5, but then we Goslinged it up a point and a half to a 9. And then we gave the themes a 10. That's a total of a 96. Fair to say you give Barbie an A plus? Is that what we can lock in?
It's an A plus. It's an A plus. And I'll tell you, going into it the first time 2 years ago when it came out, I never would have expected to say that. And we didn't get into that theme, but I will just say that they address the negative aspects of Barbie over the years. And I was glad that they did. I loved that.
Yeah.
It's Barbie's been controversial for a long time for good reason, and they addressed that. I loved it. So yeah, I never thought I would rate it as high, but sure enough, I did.
It was the highest grossing movie of the year domestically and globally. I think a lot of people would agree. And Jen, I'll give you my score now. To your 9, I gave the plot an 8, so pretty close there. To your
Mm.
10, I gave the characters and performances a 10. To the visual story, for the visual storytelling, to your 10, I gave it a 10. The use of sound, to your 9, I actually gave it a 10. I thought
Mm.
that it sort of did everything right and then some. There are definitely tracks in this movie that penetrated pop culture and are sort of better off because they were in the movie. Like I said, there's original music in the movie, but there's also original uses of that original music. So 10 out of 10 for me. I gave it in theme to your 10. I also gave it a 10. I feel like it's really hard for a movie to be an example of what it's trying to discuss and talk about. And for a toy movie, for a branded movie to kind of elevate and become an example of what it's always tried to be, and maybe the best example of what the brand has always tried to be, I don't think you can do much better than that. Jen, your total was a 96. My total is a 96. We tied. Look
Oh,
at that. Yeah, we had the exact same score out of 100. I think that makes it official. I think that's what that means. Eat your heart out, Greta. Jen, I'm so glad that you came into the jungle. I hope
thank
you'll come back
you.
sometime. We have a merch shop on Redbubble. Our sponsor is Platinum Plastic, so you should check in there. Maybe take a look around, see if there's anything you like. Let us know.
I'd love to come back to the jungle. And I will just say also, I checked out the merch. I love it.
Oh,
There's so many cool things in there, so I'm gonna pick what I'm gonna get. But
awesome. I know you're a big fan of Sid the Cinema Sloth, as he is a big fan of yours as well.
I
Um,
am. I love all these clips that I've already heard of his. I want to hear more. So I'm into it. I'm down.
Jen, it was lovely. Thank you so much for coming, and until next time, girl bye. Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch. Greta Gerwig's 2023 summer blockbuster delivers laughs, original music, and production design that brings a timeless brand to life by perfectly marrying contemporary ideals and style with classic Hollywood filmmaking techniques. Barbie explores the experience of growing up and becoming aware of your mortality through the lens of gender roles, or at least hilarious caricatures of them. For every stereotype the film showcases, it also presents immediate duality, and no one in the movie, human or toy, is even close to perfect. It's no surprise that a film based on the most iconic doll in the history of plastic uses the female experience as the springboard for its message. But to write Barbie off as nothing more than a celebration of feminism is to miss the point. Like the Lego Movie and Toy Story franchise, Barbie explores the frightening process of considering what it means to exist. But where the characters in those films express feelings of wanting to be needed, Barbie thoroughly traverses the complicated ecosystem of women, men, and their need to exist harmoniously. Spoiler, things turn out alright in the end for Barbie and her friends, but what undoubtedly defines the title character as a true heroine is her accountability and willingness to acknowledge her own shortcomings and the role she played in making Ken feel unwanted. In the end, Barbie is a character that doesn't have all the answers, but operates with pure intentions and learns from her mistakes. So I'm very lucky to be joined again by the incredibly talented director of photography, Jeremy McDaniel. Hello, Barbie. I mean, Jeremy.
I can't believe you had me back. I didn't scare you off. I didn't botch it too bad.
Oh,
well, I'm glad to be here.
Are you kidding me? That
Thank
soothing
you.
voice of yours?
This is my radio voice. Yeah, I'm talking really low. I just want to say, deeply unqualified to be here and talking about Barbie. But
No, get out of here.
this is the second time seeing this movie, and I had a lot of different feelings about it the second time I watched it than the first time. I don't want to say I dismissed it, but my initial instinct the first time I watched this film was, oh, this movie is not for me. But I think on the second watch, I was like, oh, there's actually a lot of layers here that I didn't fully appreciate the first watching. So I'm excited to get into it.
I liked it the first time. I actually liked it a lot more the second time. So it's interesting to hear you say that you also seem to maybe have appreciated it a bit more. This is a really fun movie. This is a movie that has a lot going on, and it has a pretty kooky plot. What'd you think of it?
It's very kooky. I think listen, you go into this, and I'm so glad that of everyone who could have made this movie, it was Greta, because I think that she had an exquisite voice around. I've always appreciated her as a filmmaker for just like the honesty of her voice as a writer and as a director, and it feels really authentic, you know. And so this could have been a really different movie. So to that end, I think you're going immediately into a really challenging set of like, well, how do you make a movie about a doll, but also a doll that has such like cultural cachet as Barbie, and so it's just so associated for so many with like the female experience of growing up. The first time I watched it, I was just like, this plot feels a little convoluted, but they're figuring it out. And the second time I watched it, I realized pretty early on, and it's one of my first notes that I made to myself is, oh, this movie is intentionally parroting the experience of women in the world versus the experience of men in inverting it in the Barbie world, to the point that like they think they've solved, you know, sexism, and that like they're very confused that like they come to the real world and it's not solved. It's like, what are you talking about? We fixed it all. Like the whole intro is basically about like, great, Barbie's fixed it and we're good to go. You know,
It's such a little commentary on how easy when you're in a vacuum and when you surround yourself by like-minded people, no matter what your cause is, no matter what you think, it's so easy to think that, oh yeah, we've got it all figured out, when in actuality it's the exact opposite. It feels like such an appropriate time to be having the conversation. It feels like you said, Greta is the perfect. I can't imagine anyone other than Margot Robbie. It just seems like.
I mean, she is Barbie. She is Barbie.
It seems like in every way this movie.
And to the fact that like they made the joke about was like, don't make this point if you're like the Helen Mirren voiceover, which is like flawless. Of all people, obviously get Helen Mirren to do your voiceover, and then to make that joke at like such a poignant point in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Note to the filmmakers. But to that point, though, it's a very self-aware movie, which I think is what I do like about it. It's always aware of what it is and what it's not and what it's trying to do. And I think you have to be with this kind of thing because it is so rough. It's culturally referential. And so if you took itself too seriously, it would kind of like miss the point.
Yeah.
So the inherent parody, I think, throughout it is just, it's necessary and it's really excellent. I think to go back to the plot conversation, I think that I was initially thrown off because you have all these threads, right? You've got, the America Ferrera story and
Yeah.
her, and then you've got the thread of Barbie kind of figuring out her identity
Hmm.
and then meeting, the creator of Barbie and then that whole kind of character arc and then like the CEOs and the executive staff of Barbie and they're running around and then the Barbies versus Kens cultural dynamic, social dynamic. But going back to watch it a second time, I was like, okay, all these things are doing something very intentional, and they feel confusing because it's a lot to sort of keep up with on some level. But like, there's so many layers of possible exploration here. So threading that needle is really hard from a storytelling standpoint. And I think that like while I think it's not perfect, it's a very admirable attempt at figuring out
Oh,
how to do that. And I think that all of the things that they do, all the choices that they do make pay off. And I say that because the contrast of the all male CEO executive staff thing, which feels very they're all very like childish and weird, right?
oh,
It's
it's
like
very funny.
such a
Yeah.
strange thing with obviously Will Ferrell,
Training. Yes. Yes.
fantastic choice.
Yeah.
and and then meeting in some back corridor somewhere the real creator of Barbie and her intention behind the character. I have this sort of thought that I want to inject in the conversation, which is that Barbie world is the corporate male fantasy of egalitarianism that keeps them in control and avoids actual responsibility.
Well, and I think
Uh,
that's echoed in the idea that when Ken takes over Barbie Land, there is a time where the Barbies are happy. They think that they're happy, and I think what
well,
you
and then they're like, we're making money off the Ken shit.
I think that is in and of itself not a direct reference, but definitely an echo of what you're talking about and how knowing that Mattel or a big brand or quite frankly even a big movie is meant to have a sincere relationship within its audience when we inherently know, look, they want us interested in this because they're going to profit from it. It's a very cynical approach to take, and I think we have to be willing to admit that there can be more to it if we're ever going
Sure.
to expect the creators to do more. And Barbie is
Also,
such
like,
an
I mean,
example of that they
props to
do.
Mattel for being willing to be mocked in this movie, which I think is like, more than a lot of brands are willing to do.
And it works. The highest grossing film domestically and worldwide of 2023. I mean, I think it's an achievement. Everything we're talking about works within the film, but this clearly worked culturally. I mean, I
Oh,
think
and it set the bar for this kind of movie.
it set a bar that I think it might be impossible to top because it is so clever in the way that it handles the very important conversations that it's having. Barbie, with a lot of humility in its plot, sort of suggests that every group could be a little bit more emotionally
Sure.
intelligent, and we all
Sure.
need to learn from each other, and we all need to be able to laugh at each other a bit and fall on our face. And hats off to Ryan Gosling, who, much like Margot Robbie, is probably one of the best looking people of all time, and he is such a goofball in this movie. I mean, he at no point is somebody you'd want to be, and that's
Does not
both.
take himself too seriously.
I mean, Margot Robbie's really great. She's so funny in this and walks that great tightrope of just making a character who how do you bring Barbie to life, and she does it so well because there's so much humility and there is grace, but there's this childlike sort of wonder.
And I think like the Greta and the filmmakers did a really admirable job of making a movie that, like I said before, threads that needle on so many levels and really effectively so. And so like if the fact that they found a way to make this movie and make it so effectively is pretty remarkable.
It is rare that you see a movie and it just feels like an instant classic, and this is such a
Totally.
great example of, like I said, the creative forces behind it, the cast, the timing of when it comes out. It's really, there's a ton of great movies we can point to in the last 5 years, the last decade, whatever we want. But this really does feel like a movie people will be hopefully if all goes well with this podcast, people are still talking about movies in 50 to
Yeah,
100 years. But it really does feel like something culturally we're going to be talking about in the same way people talk about The Godfather in the 70s.
totally. Everybody that's bringing things to the table, um, marshmallow pink world of Barbie Land from I mean like production design alone is just
uh,
staggeringly good.
yeah.
But even the way the cinematography leans into that, we can talk about that later, obviously. But like down to like the casting choices, down to um, the music and the songwriting and the very intentional and thoughtful and deliberate and funny writing. And, there's just everybody is bringing something to the table in this movie. It's not like there's not like a clear cut, like this is what makes this movie
Right.
work. It's like everybody's bringing something, and the movie works as like a collective sum of all
Yeah.
of its parts, which I think is the best kind of filmmaking because of the nature of what kind of movie this is. Like everybody brought something to the table in like a really special way.
So on that note, what do you give the plot? 1 out of 10.
Grading it on a scale because of the challenges, I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
The next category is characters and performances. And when you're talking about a movie like Barbie, I mean, right out of the gate, the name of the movie, you're talking about one of the most, I mean, next to Mickey Mouse and Jesus, one of the most iconic sort of characters in the American lexicon. And especially when you're talking about female characters,
Sure.
it's a much shorter list, unfortunately, and she's probably close to the top of it. The Michael Cera character, I just thought was incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
such. I don't want to say it's a throwaway character, but on a
Oh, it's
long
it's not a
list.
throwaway character though. He's like this weird bridge. He like
Oh,
gets both sides. Sort of.
I probably align more with a Michael Cera than I do a Ken or a Ryan Gosling in
Sure.
that Michael Cera's character is putting in the work. Like he's beating up
Right.
construction workers, he's on top of things, but he is sort of forced to deal with the same patriarchy that the women are, and yet he doesn't really seem to be acknowledged.
Right. Well,
There's a
the interesting thing about his character, I think, Alan, is that like there is no other Alan. There's just the one Alan. So he's the only character in the whole thing that's just like their own thing. And I think you can tell that he's like struggling with that. He's just like, well, I'm not Ken.
Well, and that's what I think it does so well that the Barbie brand, as I understand, believe it or not, this lion did not play with a lot of Barbies growing up, but my understanding is, that there is this sort of aspect of it where everybody has their own kind of version of Barbie. And when you watch this movie, it really does feel like all these different people are represented. Like I said in my intro, nobody's perfect. Everybody's sort of dealing with similar problems in their own ways. And it is very comical when you talk about the weird Barbie. She is sort of the wizard in this movie, the Obi-Wan, this sort of
Right.
guiding light, but is somehow kind of treated.
Which I also talk about like a fantastic, I
Oh,
know we moved on from plot, but like fantastic plot device
yeah.
is like, oh, the real world playing with the Barbie affects the Barbie world. That's just like, that's such a genius entry point into like, how do we create the problem? But like, so her character doing that, and then obviously like the inciting incident around, um, what you'll end up finding out is America Ferrera's character around like her experience with Barbie and why Barbie's experiencing these things. But that's like such a clever device.
No, I totally agree, and I think that it is it's great to bring up, is even under the guise of characters and performances, because that dynamic between the characters ultimately is a symbol of what I think is one of the themes of this movie, which is valuing play and valuing
Mm.
creativity and how you can learn about yourself if you're designing a Barbie or if you're any whatever your hobbies are, and how important that creative self-exploration is
Because
always.
it's a mirror, right? That like the Barbie world is a mirror to the real world, and so the characters are mirrors of each other. And even in the Barbie and Ken relationship, on some level, they're like they're inverts of each other, and they're mirroring the male and female experience in the real world very intentionally. So it's such a diverse cast of really talented people, and I think everybody's bringing something to the table to their because it isn't just one version of something. To your point about like all the different kinds of Barbies, it's like there's all of these little threads. Same with characters,
Yeah.
and everybody's doing something, and they're pulling their own weight in a really effective way. And so it's obviously our title characters are excellent, but like everybody's great, and the casting choices across the board are great.
There's just so many great faces. There's such a great representation of great female voices and actors and actors, female actors, female actresses from, the last maybe 20, 30 years of cinema. And it's again so rare to have a movie that can handle heavy themes, have hard conversations, but this movie is so funny all the time.
Yeah.
In seeing it a second time, I laughed probably more than I did the first time. I mean,
It's
it's
a
a
really
really
excellent parody of its
so
like of what
clever.
it's just very clever. You can tell that just like everyone's like excited to be there. you've been on set, like you know what it's like when the set is like good vibes and everyone's
Right.
feeling it.
Palpable.
And
Yeah.
you really get that, it like comes through the thing that you're making. And I think that that's true about this movie. And to like mention Gosling, when I heard about that casting, I was just like, I don't know how I feel about that. Felt predictable in a way that like I didn't love, you
Sure.
know?
Sure.
But like he brings such an energy to this character. You could tell that he was just like 110%. Like
Oh yeah.
I'm doing my canon. I'm like all in on it. And I love his commitment to the absurdity of the kind of character he's trying to play. He's so dialed into it.
I totally agree. I mean, it's like who else but Hoffman could play Tootsie? Who else other than Robin Williams could play Mrs. Doubtfire? I don't know why I'm thinking of all drag, but
Sure, sure.
but there's
But
a
especially for a guy who has like a reputation playing these like kind of quiet, brooding characters,
yeah, no shades of
it's
Ides of March in this performance. Yeah.
yeah, no, not at all.
I'll digress in continuing to go forward on characters and performances because it's such a rich movie.
Well, I just want like I want to say a thing about the characters in general, which is I think like the female leads, in particular Margot and America, have very authentic performances. They feel so honest and good. And like obviously Margot is perfect in every sense of a word in terms of like embodying this
Right.
kind of
Idealized
character. But
version.
also like a character who's on a real emotional journey, is not plastic, is really complicated. And at first blush, it seems like a predictable role, but then she just brings the heat with like aplomb in a way that I think, I mean, she's a stellar actor,
Yeah.
but she does a really excellent job in this movie of just like playing both sides of the field, a lot of nuance, being the kind of absurd archetype over the top thing that is
Right.
Barbie, and yet at the same time like going on her emotional journey. So that was really fun to watch.
No, I think it's a really great point. And look, speaking as a mascot, I can imagine, Margot having to play a human that's a toy that's also a mascot, and how we've already said it, we're so quick to go, well, we can't think of anybody else who could do it. The same thing with America Ferrera. I don't know that if you could pick a better actress to play the sort of, I don't want to say the every woman because that has a level of averageness to it where I'm more or less talking about there's a
There's an
quality to
approachability to
her.
it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is lovable and authentic. There's the 1A and the 1B. I think she's the perfect choice to play sort of the American woman, the contemporary American woman.
She is like a modern archetype for sure. Like she checks all these boxes of like, what it means to be, a mom and a woman. And like obviously like you delve a lot into that with her monologue towards the end of the movie
Yeah.
and which is I think really excellent and needed
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
same way that like Barbie is representative of like the like toy experience of women, like they're trying to pick a person who is the real life
Right.
person, that the analog for that, and that's a really tricky thing to do.
Of
And I
course.
think that like she does that really well.
Well, on that note, 1 out of 10. You got to grade it. Characters and performances.
There's really nobody in this movie that's like 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. All right. Visual storytelling with Barbie. This movie is easy to look at all times. It's so fun and
Mhm.
beautiful. Feels like an old Bugsy kind of Berkeley musical style.
The awareness of the background and like it feels like a
Yeah.
backdrop in like the best kind of way.
As a lion cub, playing with toys was a big part of my experience coming up. There are a lot of toy movies out there that don't even attempt to say, hey, how do we recreate play? And Barbie is the only
Mm-hmm.
movie I've ever seen that recreates play. As a lion that never played with Barbies, I thought it was so fun the way she takes a shower and there's no water, or the way she just kind of glides from different places.
The things that are obviously stickers, like there's no milk
Yeah,
coming out of the
exactly.
milk thing. Yeah, no, no, totally. It's not a theme. It's not a movie themed by Barbie. It's a movie that's literally about
Right.
the world of
Bring
Barbie
it back to
and
life.
sort of the weird things that like only exist in a child's imagination are true about Barbie world as well.
Right. And I love that it feels at all time like everything everyone's doing. Some kid is playing with this right now. Some
For
kid is
sure.
making this happen. When the Kens are arguing and fighting, or,
The
well,
beach you off thing.
yes, all that, which I thought was so funny. When you're in Barbie Land, it really does feel like you're watching kids playing with toys, but on the
Right.
highest level of production value
Sure.
possible.
Another great example of that is just like when he's like throwing the wardrobe out of
Yes,
the and
the
then it just like
pause.
floats in the air for a minute and like says the name of the thing. Also, I should say it's like very intentional throwbacks to people that like know and love Barbie, and I think that
And
you do love. I'd love when you see America Ferrera's character coming into this world for the first time. She's like,
mhm.
I had that. Like, oh,
Yeah,
that
she's
was like it. Just
yeah.
she's experiencing it as a child.
There's the Lego movie. I grew up playing with Legos, but when I watch the Lego movie, I don't inherently reminded of an experience I literally had while I was playing. Whereas I would imagine when you're watching Barbie, there's just all these moments where again you go, "Oh, I did have that," or "I did this," or "I
Hmm.
play with it." The way
Yeah.
they present these things that I've never even heard of. Not the Paisleys.
Right.
It's just
Right,
so
right.
great. Yeah.
Or like the way that like the car drives itself and like she doesn't touch
Yes.
the steering
Yes.
wheel or like yeah, just the things that like obviously that would it's just this is the way the physics would work
And
in a world where a child is playing with it.
easy to talk about the production design, but any comedy, if it's a success, that means you have a successful edit. I've been on a lot of sets where there were really funny people and there was a lot of really funny stuff shot, and it wasn't funny when it got seen because
Right,
the
right.
rhythm was thrown off. This movie is so sharp and again so quick and has a rhythm to it in a tone in a pace that is really consistent. I mean, down to the last line of dialogue in the movie is a punchline.
I also think that the writing as well and just like how well crafted it is and that interplay obviously like editing is essentially like part two of the writing.
Yeah,
Yes, you know.
absolutely.
And obviously so much of comedy is timing towards the end of the movie where
I know
they're
exactly
like
what you mean.
deceiving all the Kens and then like just the way that like they set up the song that they're
They're
all
playing
playing
on
around
the
the
beach.
campfires.
Yes.
The timing of it's so perfect.
There's such a charm to it, and it's really I feel bad for people who maybe aren't checking out the movie or watch it with some sort of resistance because they think that they're maybe trying to that it has an agenda, because I think the only agenda this movie has is to have fun. I really appreciate this film. I'm curious, what do you get? What would you
Totally.
give it out of 10?
It's about effectiveness, right? We talked about this the last time we talked. Because it's so I mean the cinematography in particular, it kind of blends into the background. Like intentionally so, because it's not really meant to be to that extent, like it's very effective because like it lets what needs to be at the forefront be at the forefront, which is the performance and the environment and things like that. It's a very visually rich film, and for that reason, I'm going to give it an 8.
I'm going to move right along to use of sound because this is a movie that has original music. For maybe the first two-thirds of the movie is like a very, very pseudo musical, only in that the characters are kind of hearing the songs, or rather, the songs are sort of reacting to the characters. Then we do get full-on dance numbers. Ken, with quite an emotional musical number
Although
in some of her
it,
pop.
I mean, no, I think your assessment it is not exclusively a musical, but that's also a spectrum, right?
Sure.
I think it's like, no music to rock opera.
Right.
It's somewhere on the low end of the spectrum.
No
But
Country of old for Old Men to Meatloaf. I think that was the
yeah,
spectrum.
but like even just which I don't fully think I appreciated was it the Lizzo song at the very beginning of the movie?
Yeah,
Where like the dialogue moments in the song that are like referential to what's happening in the movie that are just like really funny.
yeah.
It's not just like music attached to a story. It's like music that's designed for the story. And I think that is by definition a musical.
You
Well,
know.
we have to talk
Oh,
about the Ken song
yes.
because I think I remember hearing it. It was like Ryan Gosling kind of spearheaded putting it in the film. I think it's such an effective an important part of his character arc. I think one of the things that I missed the first time around watching this movie, I didn't feel like they were being, I mean, obviously I'm going to say this isn't my man, but like, I feel like they were being fully fair with like Ken's experience of the thing. And then going back and watching it a second time, I was like, oh no, like they are showing you his like where he's
Yeah.
conflicted. And we'll talk about this with theme, later, but like it's fundamentally a movie about identity. So like I like to being having this song where he's just like actively singing about this conflict of what it means to be Ken
Right.
is so important to the film. And just like it's such a necessary bookend to that section of the movie.
Well, and it's his. I mean, America Ferrera has her monologue, her big monologue moment, which I think is kind of like the in many ways sort of the climax for her character and her what she performs. Margot has her scene at the very end where she's talking to her creator, and I think that's kind of the peak in her poignant scene. I think you're right. The song for Ken is his moment. Like that is his time. It's his monologue. It's his moment of growth and realization, and we as the audience get to experience that with him. Look, it's worth saying one of the reasons I did want to speak with another male about Barbie is I feel like it's important for men to see this movie and to talk about it. You touched on this a little bit. I think Barbie is gonna be a kind of a hard watch for men and thoughtful men and good men, men that don't necessarily feel like they represent some of the characteristics that are being lampooned in the movie.
Sure. There's a part of it
But
like, well, what about me? Like,
yeah,
well, I'm not. It's very easy to access that, and I think it's important and to say, well, okay, hold on.
and I think that watching the movie a second time you almost got that out of the way. It's like okay, well we've
Totally.
experienced it because I had a similar experience the first time when I was like, oh, they kind of maybe they did Ken dirty or something like that. But watching it the second time, I was like, no, this felt really appropriate. Barbie as a character is meant to be a symbol of independence for women. So for the story to end with both characters, I feel like being more comfortable being apart, I think it is a more profound statement about what it means to coexist. Because to coexist with someone you love doesn't say as much as it means to coexist with somebody maybe you used to love or that you love in a different way.
I would agree with you, and I think it's important for men, especially men who like maybe lean liberal, maybe are trying to be sensitive to the experience of people that are different from you, especially women.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to be like defensive around, well, I'm not like that. Like, but to do that is to miss the point. The point is like,
Exactly.
it's not your experience. It doesn't speak to yours, and you
And
don't need to
you
negate it. Like, let it be what it is by itself, and like understand what that says.
and what I hope would happen, because this is what happened for me while I was watching America Ferrera's, I keep referring to as her monologue. I think anybody who's seen the movie knows what I'm talking about. What she's describing by the end of the monologue feels more like a representation of the human experience than it necessarily
Mhm.
does the female experience. But it is clearly the vessel is female, and so the voice is
Mhm.
female, the perspective is female. And I think that to your point, it's so easy when you are aligning with someone sometimes to be defensive because you feel like, well, if I feel the same thing that you feel, but you're saying what you feel is uniquely feminine, then you must be wrong because we both feel the same thing. And what I think the movie does so well is it allowed me, and from my male perspective, to just comfortably go, oh, I actually align with what you're saying. I experience many of the same things that you're experiencing. And I think that again, when we're talking about coexisting, there is this weird defense that can immediately come up when someone
Yeah,
different than you is describing a similar experience. And I think this movie and what can be so important about cinema is that it allows us to have these conversations. And
totally.
considering that doesn't really have anything to do with music, but
We totally veered into a conversation, but which I think is an important conversation, so I'm glad we're
yeah,
having it. But
yeah.
yeah, it's perfectly whimsical, but really effective from a storytelling standpoint. Did it need to be a musical? No. Like, is it better because of the musical? 100%.
But I am curious, out of 10, what do you rank it? I got to imagine it's on the high side.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Okay. Locking it in. That brings us to theme. This movie, ripe with things. Coexisting, I think, is a lot about this movie, what this movie is about, and also more importantly, learning to coexist within yourself. I feel like this is a movie that does a really great job of exploring the theme of what it means to be human.
I would say that in a slightly different way, but for me, it's a movie about identity and belonging. The real world is really complicated, and there are all of these forces pulling on you that ask something of you. And you have this whole cast of characters from Barbie to Ken, all struggling with what it means to be who they are in a world that's like asking them to be something else. If you try to define your identity externally, you will never feel right. You'll never feel good enough. It will always be inadequate. one of my favorite moments in the film is the last sort of dialogue scene between Barbie and Ken, and she says to him, "Maybe all the things that you thought made you aren't really you." And I was like, that's what this movie's about. What does it mean to be you? How is what it is to be you defined by others? And what is, how do you have the bravery to break out of that?
I guess if I were to point out, I don't know that I want to even say a flaw, but when we get to the end, the sense of community that we're left with, it seems less about that because we journey with Barbie then kind of in her decision to what it seems
Yeah.
like not be immortal, which I thought was a
Yeah.
really great representation of what what growing up is. Growing up is recognizing
Hmm.
that there is a
That's an interesting take. Yeah.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I felt like thematically that was a really kind of like
I didn't
beautiful
think about
way.
it. I didn't think about it in terms of growing up. I'll be honest, that of all the things about this movie is what I struggle with the most. I don't know that I fully buy into the choice of making her human. That's a good choice for her journey, but I do understand, like when you say it like that, I can understand
Well,
that,
I
it's a
also,
metaphor. Yeah.
what would you give the theme out of 10?
Well, I'm gonna say 9 out of 10 on the
9 out
themes.
of 10. All right. Remember, not a 9.5, just a solid 9. Just
No,
kidding.
I know how your system works. I know your game is played. I'm sure I'm gonna be disappointed by my final score.
For plot, we've got 7.5. For characters and performances, a 9. Visual storytelling, an 8. Use of sound, an 8. And theme, a 9. That gives us a total of an 83. Do you want to adjust that? Do you want to make that
Gonna
an
grade on the
A?
curve. I feel
You
like
want
it.
to grade
No,
it
it's a B plus.
a B plus?
It's an 87. Like it's just a really solid film. Maybe if I'm discounting it at all, it's because it's just like an innate flaw of like the genre and what they're trying, like what it is that they like are bound to on some level with the movie like this.
Well, you gave the film a B plus, an 87 is your adjusted score. I gave the plot an 8, very similar to you. You gave it a 7.5, I gave it an 8. I gave the characters and performances a 10. I know that's sort of blasphemy in your grading system, but I don't think you could get a more iconic performance than Barbie and Ken out of this movie. And with all the other performances, for me, that was a really comfortable 10. Same with the visual storytelling, same with the use of sound, and same with the theme. I really like
Listener,
this.
I would just say consider the scale differences between Al and I, and then
Absolutely.
just grade me on that curve, please.
Look, I sleep 22 and a half hours a day. I think that
Wow,
I come into these reviews with
not
maybe
just
a
certain
little
times of
less
year.
stress. I mean,
That's
look,
amazing.
it's a lion vibe. I gave it a 96. For me, it was an easy A. I'm really glad that I got to watch this a second time. I'm glad I got to watch
Totally.
it
I'm
with
so
you.
glad that you made me watch it again because I don't know that I would have gone back to it. And I honestly like totally changed my experience of the movie. And I'm really glad I saw it again.
Would you come back to the jungle and watch another movie with Al?
I will always watch a movie with Al.